Hello, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Once again, I have deleted the intro video to this video. So this is the piece that you'll be seeing in the next video. You can have a little sneaky peek of it. This video that I'm going to show you is an oriental themed video, and I'm going to keep it super simple with this makeover. I think I used 3 Dixie Belle products in total, and that's it. Technically, I use 4 Dixie Belle products if you count the white lightning cleaner. As always, I'll list the products in the description below. This is the piece that I'm going to make over today. As you can see, it's incredibly dirty and dusty. It's been in my storage unit years, absolutely years. I bought it off Facebook Marketplace because it was such a quirky and unique piece, and as you may know by now, I am somewhat of a furniture hoarder. So it went in my storage unit, and I've made it my mission this year to kind of clear down some of that hoard. So this is one of the pieces that I'm going to be making over and hopefully sell. It is incredibly dusty. It's got cobwebs on it and all sorts. So I'm just starting out vacuuming the entire thing to get any loose debris off the surface. I also found a key and a kind of bar thing in the drawer, so that's an absolute bonus because I actually didn't realise that I had those. And obviously the bar goes through those 2 little latch things. I have no idea where the key goes. I don't know. Anybody know that's watching this know what the key might do? There's no keyholes in any of the handles. I have looked online and possibly it could be a padlock that went through that bar once you'd inserted it through the kind of slots, and then a padlock clamped on the other end. Anyway, haven't found a padlock, and I don't know if you can buy them, so we're just going to leave it as it is. I've got the key just in case. So obviously it needed a thorough clean. So I started out vacuuming it, as you saw. I took all the drawers out, made sure there was no dust and debris in the backs of the drawers, because sometimes there often is. And then I gave it a really good scrub using Dixie Belle's White Lightning Cleaner. Never ever forget to clean inside your piece as well, and that includes if your piece has got drawers, take those drawers out and clean those wooden runners or anything that's behind there, because quite often papers and things can get dropped behind there from previous owners. You might even be lucky, you might even find some money. It hasn't happened to me yet, but I do know people that found money in the backs of drawers. I had to give the top quite a thorough sanding because it had some damage on the top. Now this piece is very rustic, as you can tell. The style of it is rustic. The kind of wood that it's been made out of is very rustic, and it's been assembled in that kind of way. These pieces are supposed to look, you know, a little bit aged and rustic. This is obviously a reproduction piece. It's not a genuine antique Chinese Ming cabinet, but I am sanding out those imperfections on the top, and as you can see, it's a very pale wood underneath that dark stain. The rest of the piece that didn't have any damage on, I'm just going to give a very quick scuff sand. I want to retain that dark varnish because I do want to see that when I distress it at a later date. I started out using Antebellum blue. I wanted to go for blues, a blue colour palette, and I had kind of 3 colours in mind, and I wanted to kind of layer them up, starting with the darkest. So Antebellum blue is the darkest. As you can see, I've decanted my paint into a tub, and that's because I'm using a really big brush that doesn't fit in the normal pots of paint. So this brush is called the Big Daddy brush, and I mean, if we are getting really technical, this is another product from Dixie Belle Paint. So we're on 5 items now, not 3. So I'm a bit of a liar in my introduction, but you kind of get the gist of where I was going with this. It is going to be a simple finish. So I did start out using Antebellum blue with the idea of using other colours, and I wanted to layer them up in a really kind of rough fashion. So I'm using the Big Daddy brush completely dry. I'm not putting any water, I'm not spritzing any water down on the surface, and as you can see, I'm kind of cross hatching the paint, and there are patches where you can see that warm toned varnish through the paint, and that is exactly the look that I'm trying to achieve. So the top and the sides are very flat. Obviously the front is flat, but that's where the drawers and doors are, and that's the bit that I'm doing now. And you might think I'm mental for not taking the handles off, but there is a valid reason for it, and the biggest reason is I don't want to break them. They will be removed. Always makes me laugh when people say the handles won't come off so I'm painting over them. All handles will come off. If it's been fitted on, it will come off. It's just that these are very unique to this piece. I highly doubt I'd be able to replace them if I did break one. They fit in using like a big metal prong, and then the prong is bent. Now I've had experience, quite a lot of experience with that type of handle, and it is quite easy to break them. And then they've got pins on the front that obviously hold them in place. I don't want to risk breaking these. So I am going to be leaving them in place to paint. The whole piece is going very rustic and distressed, so if I get a little paint on the handles, it's not going to be the worst case scenario, because I'm going to use gilding wax at the end to kind of give them a bit of bling. So it's only going to be the very edges if I do get a little bit of paint on them. But that's kind of in keeping with the kind of rustic piece. I'm not going to go in and daub a thick layer of paint all over the handles, especially this one, because this one's got a little hinge where the body of the butterfly moves. It's so pretty and so unique. I've never seen anything like it, and like I say, definitely don't want to risk breaking them. So strap in, we're going to be painting over handles a little bit. The internet tends to not like it when people paint over handles, but if that's your thing, you absolutely go for it. And as I've explained, there are sometimes reasons why you might want to paint over the handles, for aesthetic reasons, to make it look in keeping with the piece, if it's distressed or whatever, if that's just your vibe, or if you're going to risk breaking them. So I'm going to use exactly the same technique as I did on the top. I'm using a very small amount of paint at the time because I don't want full coverage of the Antebellum blue over this piece. I am playing on the fact that it's got that kind of reddy varnish underneath, because it contrasts really nicely against the teal blue. I am trying my best to avoid the handles. Like I said, I don't want to apply a really thick layer of paint over these. If a little bit goes on the edge, then that's absolutely fine. Plus, because this is going over metal, it will wipe off, so I can wipe off anything that I get on there that I don't want. But a little bit around the edges is going to kind of look kind of like the piece is authentically aged and it's been chipped away at, and the paint's distressed. So the first coat of paint is dry. The good thing about this technique is that you don't apply much paint on the surface, and it does tend to dry pretty quickly. So what I plan to do is introduce a couple of other blues in the mix and make it a little bit more kind of layered. However, I really like it as it is. It looks quite simple, but obviously it's got that distressed look to it. There's a bit of the wood, the warm tone wood peeking through, which is adding a little bit of tonal variety, a little bit of shading. So I think I'm just going to stick to one colour with this. I'm just going to stick to Antebellum blue. I'm just going to slightly refine it, because obviously this initially was meant to just be the base layer, and then I was going to have other colours on top. But this is now going to be the colour. So I'm just going to refine it. I'm going to get rid of... Can you see here where I've had to sand back the original finish? So you can see some of the real pale kind of wood coming through here. Not a big fan of that. I prefer it where you can see the reddy toned wood, because that contrasts better against the teal blue colour. So I'm going to get rid of that, and then I'm just going to refine it slightly. I just love it as it is. Now, I'm sure that it would have looked equally as cool with layered up colours as well, but I just wanted to keep it simple with this, because the front handles especially are super decorative, and I just do think sometimes simple finishes are really effective. So I'm just using exactly the same brush, exactly the same technique, and I'm just making sure that the areas that weren't covered up with the Antebellum blue are covered up, like the pale areas where I had to sand it back. I don't want to see those. I want to see the dark toned wood. And what this does is it gives the impression that I've used dark wax on it, and I haven't. So you know, a lot of the times I will use dark coloured waxes, either brown or black, to create depth and dimension on a piece so that it's not just one dimensional and that it does look a bit aged and distressed. Well, this technique it kind of achieves a similar look, but you don't have to use the waxes. So before that paint layer has a chance to dry, I'm going to do a little bit of wet distressing. So you've seen me before do dry distressing, which is traditionally when you take a piece of sandpaper and sand the finish away. Wet distressing gives you a much softer finish, and I feel like it's going to suit this piece a lot more. So all you need is a rag and some water. Spray your rag so it's not drenched, just a little bit damp. And this works better the quicker you do it after you've painted, because as the paint dries, it's going to get harder and harder to wet distress. So I like to do it pretty much straight away. I've only done the tiniest kind of sweep of paint over this. It's not like a full-on layer, like thick layer of coverage. It's just like even lighter than the first coat. So I'm going to do it around the drawer edges, because obviously I've painted with the drawers in because I just wanted to see what it would look like as a whole. If you look at a piece of furniture that's distressed, you'll probably notice that it's always the edges of the drawers that are going to get knocked and bumped, because obviously they get used. So I'm going to take the piece of rag that I've dampened and I'm just going to rub it around the edge. So wet distressing is going to give you slightly different look to dry distressing. It also means that I can distress it back and the original dark finish will be apparent through the paint, as opposed to if I took sandpaper to it, it would sand that original varnish off and give me that light tone wood that's actually underneath the varnish, which I don't want to do. The other thing you've got to bear in mind with wet distressing is that you might get slightly different looks depending on how dry your paint is. So this whole thing, this whole piece was painted in one day. I did the first coat this morning, I left it to dry for an hour or so, and then I did the second coat. So it's very much still not 100% dry. If you'd left it overnight, it's going to be harder to distress, and it will also give you a slightly different result. I do believe I repeated myself there a couple of times, but you get the gist of what I'm trying to say. Wet distressing is easier the quicker you do it once you've applied your paint, if that makes sense, if it follows. If it doesn't, please comment and I will clarify further. I'm also going to distress the areas around the edge where the drawer fits into the piece, because obviously that's going to get kind of the same wear and tear as the drawer edges as well. And I'm only really going to distress around the doors and drawers on this piece, because the paint finish, how I've applied the paint in that kind of patchy way, if you will, already gives that kind of impression that it's distressed. The other thing you can do as well is then go back in with your brush. If you have distressed it too much, if you've pulled a little bit too much paint back, you can just go in with your brush and kind of dry brush over the top to any areas that you basically don't want distressing. So before I finish off this piece on the outside, I'm going to do the inside, because it's looking a little bit drab and a little bit dried out. So there is a finish on this. I don't know what it is. It's like some kind of varnish, and I'm not a fan of lining drawers. I'm not really a fan of painting inside pieces either, unless, you know, there's some serious damage or stains, then I perhaps will. But wherever I can, I like to have the contrast of the wood grain on the inside versus the painted finish on the outside. So I'm going to enhance what's already there. This piece is incredibly rustic. The style of it, the nature of it, the joints, the type of wood, everything about it is very, very rustic. So I'm never going to make this look like a perfectly polished piece. That's not the aim. All I'm doing is enhancing what's there, and I'm going to use 2 of Dixie Belle's oil-based products. There's not very many oil-based products in the Dixie Belle range, but these are 2 of them, and I'm going to mix them together to make a kind of a tinted wax. So this is Big Mamas Butta. You can use this on its own to nourish wood grain. It's obviously clear. It's got things in it like coconut oil, beeswax, hemp seed oil, loads and loads of nourishing properties. This is a scented version, this is Orange Grove, but they also do unscented and lots of other scents as well. And this product is an oil-based wood stain called No Pain Gel Stain. The shade that I'm using is Espresso, which is the darkest brown. They do lots of other browns, so you could always match one to your project that you're working on. They also do a black, a white and a grey. You can use them independently, but I'm going to mix them together to make that. I've just done a live on the Dixie Belle YouTube channel showing this exact technique. So all I'm going to do is take a scoop of Big Mamas Butta. I'll just lower you down, it's easier, and put it on here, and a scoop, about the same quantity, of No Pain Gel Stain, and then just mix them together. So as you can see, we've got something that looks very similar to No Pain Gel Stain, but I've put clear wax in it, which is obviously going to dilute it and make it not such a full coverage colour. Now I've taken the drawer out because it's going to be easier showing you there than it is trying to stick my head in the cupboard and get the camera in there as well. So all you need is a couple of rags. I've already been using this one, as you can see. There is a little bit of stain in here. It's a little bit dark, but that's why I've gone for a darker shade and hope that it'll disguise it. And then all you do is you just rub it in to the wood grain. Like I say, you can use this on a raw piece of wood. If you sanded down the insides of your drawers for whatever reason, you can also use it on an existing finish. So this has got a finish on it, which I'm pretty sure is varnish, and it sits over the top absolutely fine. So as well as giving you like a slight tint to the wood, it's also got all the nourishing properties of Big Mamas Butta and the added bonus of having a really nice scent as well. So it's going to refresh your wood, give a little tint to cover any imperfections, and make the interiors of your drawers smell delicious. To get in the corners, I'm just going to use a chip brush and just work it in that way. And also, never forget to do the sides and the bottom and the back of your drawers, because that shows when you pull the drawers out, you can see that. And this way, they all match and coordinate. The other place you don't want to neglect is in here. So obviously we've dealt with the inside of the drawers. I'm going to do the cupboard in a second. But normally I take whatever's left on the rag and I just run it around the inside of where the drawer sits into the piece, like that. And then also, if your piece has got wooden runners, like this piece has, although you can't see it because it's too dark in here, need like a little head torch, then you can just run it down the runners as well, and that helps your drawers glide really smoothly in and out. And then the golden rule with any wax-based product, and this goes for Big Mamas Butta, it goes for Best Damn Wax, it also goes for those little pots of deliciousness Gilding Wax. If you don't buff the excess off, you won't get a sheen and you'll leave too much product on the surface. So the nature of how you apply wax is that you put too much on, you remove the excess off. Removing the excess is going to give you that nice even finish. It'll allow the product to have the correct amount of product on the surface so that it can dry down and cure. If you leave it on without buffing, you will just forever have like a tacky, sticky finish to your furniture. So like I say, that goes for whether you're using Best Dang Wax, Big Mamas Butta or Gilding Wax. Any wax product requires buffing. So you need a clean rag, which I haven't got, a clean rag, and just literally buff until all that excess product is removed off the surface and you've got a nice sheen to the finish, and then just let it dry. Obviously with all products there is a drying time and a curing time. This is no different, so I would always advise exactly the same curing time as everything else, 4 weeks, 30 days, and then your piece will be ready to have items put inside. Another thing I like to do when I have used wax, any wax product, is go back in a day or two later and just give it another buff, just to make sure you've got all the excess product off the surface. The other wax product I'm going to use is to finish this piece, and I'm going to use it on the exterior over the paintwork, and that's Best Dang Wax. So this is a water-based wax, not an oil-based wax like the one I've just used. And this sits really nicely over chalk mineral paint and gives quite a traditional finish. So I applied that with a blue sponge and then buffed that off using a microfiber cloth. The final thing I'm going to do is put some gold gilding wax on the handles, because I feel like that gold and teal combination will really pop. This is another oil-based product from Dixie Belle. It's permanent, meaning you don't need to top coat it. It is an oil-based product, like I just said, so I normally do this last. Once I've used all of my other water-based products, I will put the finishing touches with gold gilding wax. You can use this on metal, you can use it on painted surfaces to add accents or detail. It's a really versatile product. So I'm just swirling it on with a paintbrush to kind of give a more patchy look. And then when it was on for the surface for about an hour or so, again, buff it off like I explained with all of the other wax products. That's going to give you that shine and durability and remove any excess product. As always, there's a few close-ups for you so that you can see the finished look. You can just see the interior of the drawer there being kind of brought back to life and nourished with the wood grain. I had to give you a little close-up of that handle with the butterfly detail on because it's super pretty. And here's the finished piece. And final product count on the amount of Dixie Belle products that I actually used, it's 6, 7 if you include the Big Daddy brush, which makes me a big liar. As always, thank you for watching the video. If you don't already subscribe to my channel, I'd love it if you'd hit the subscribe button, and I will catch you next time. Bye!